Pretty much all of my adult life was spent as a traveling musician. I guess I was an adult. I don't know if I ever grew up or not, but that's another story. But I retired at 65 from the traveling to spend more time with my grandkids since I'd missed a lot of my own kids growing up as a result of being on the road so much. The last 13 years of my career had been a big change for me because I went from secular to gospel music. My dad was a Baptist minister, so I suppose you could say I was just returning home. My music was a blend of bluegrass and country gospel, so naturally I spent a lot of time in the mountains of North Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia performing. So much, in fact, that my wife and I purchased a little fixer-upper cabin outside Franklin, North Carolina about 2001 as a result of my playing a lot in the tourist area near there. This started a very long and a little at a time restoration of the cabin. One thing that enabled me to finally retire from the traveling was the help of my wife, Linda. Her real estate company, Bird Youmans Realty, was doing well, so she made it possible for me to leave the road that I once had loved so much, but in truth, I had grown a little weary of it at the end. I also opened an eBay store, papatrains.com. There I sell model train-related items for layouts and such. It was a lot of work for about 3 years, but after a while, by using the software eBay provides for store owners, I was able to automate a good deal of the process so that I mostly now just have to fill orders. Along the way, I greatly improved my personal website, birdyoumans.com. There, I sell my music in the form of CDs and downloads, and I have videos there as well. All of this gave me more time to spend working on our mountain cabin. Now, I had always had a love affair with wood. I built shelves, speaker cabinets, did home repair and restoration on my house, and I even built a recording studio next to my house to record my music as well as others. I did this mostly by myself, but my boys were always good to help me when I needed someone on the other end of a 4x8 sheet of plywood or something like that. There were, of course, many other projects along the way. I still have my eBay store and recording studio, and I continue to record. But somewhere in there, while working on the cabin, is when it hit me that since I am now somewhat retired, a great deal of the spare time I have left in my life will likely be spent on projects that mostly revolve around wood. My wife and I are even restoring an old, early 1800 farmhouse. I'm doing a lot of the house restoration, and she's doing the grounds since she loves flowers and gardening. It's been fun. So why not document all this for those who might be interested in such a journey? That prompted me to come up with Bird's Adventures in Woodworking. I certainly consider myself an amateur in the larger sense because I've never done this for a living, but I don't suppose I'm a total beginner either. I'm hoping the journey is going to be a fun learning experience. I'll do things my way, and some of you are going to laugh because you know a better way, and other times we may learn together, but so be it. It'll just be about getting the job done one way or the other, so I may at times be improvising for lack of a better way to describe it. But enough introduction. Let's get started building a shop. After my retirement from touring in 2010 at the age of 65, I began having about every other week to spend on finishing up the cabin. By April of 2013, I was basically living in my North Carolina cabin every other week. I had finished it to a point where I could live comfortably in it, and though it still needed a lot of trim and finishing work, I decided to take a break from working on it and build an 8x16 shop to store the tools I was, at that time, storing in the cabin. My wife certainly agreed, so the race was on. I should have built the shop before working on the cabin in the first place, but then that's another story. By the first part of May, I had the shop floor joist in, and by mid-May, the floor was down. As you can see, the shop is in a little wooded area on the backside of my acre. I was somewhat limited as to how big I could make the shop by trees and such, which I didn't want to cut down. But I was able to fit the 8x16 structure rather nicely into the woods just a bit uphill from the house. The framing work actually went along rather smoothly, with no major glitches to speak of. The framing was done by the end of May, and the roof was finished with metal roofing applied. Then I began to put up the outer plywood the 1st of June, and had it pretty much roughed in by the middle of June. Once it was completed, I realized that it was going to be a bit cramped if I tried to actually set up the tools to do my cutting and routing inside, not to mention the dust factor. So, I decided to put a front porch along the entire front of the building and then put the heavy tools like planer and joiner and sanding station, table saw, etc., put all those on wheels, and when I needed them, roll them out on the porch where there'll be plenty of room to cut any size lumber I'll ever need to cut. And the bonus, the dust will stay outside. At the end of the day, I just take my compressor and air gun, and I blow all the dust off as well as out of the tools before I roll them back into the shop. Also, the tools I need for each project will vary, since I most likely won't use every tool every time. I then proceeded to cover the walls with pegboard sheeting up to a height of 8 feet and filled in some of the upper gaps as well. Meantime, I was building the doors and windows out of the cutouts that came out of the plywood sheeting where the doors and windows would go. Rustic, but turned out really nice. If you wanted an absolute fit for insulation purposes, this would not be how to do it. But this is a rustic little shop, so it works out just fine, and they kind of look old-timey. Kind of cool. So now you've seen the beginning of my adventure. Things are sort of in place at this point. Along the way, I took pictures and videos of some of the individual projects it took to get to this point. I did not shoot the projects with the completeness that I would like to from here on, because I just needed to get to this point as quickly as possible. Now I can light the scenes properly when needed and take other steps necessary to make decent videos. I'll be learning as I go. But I will, however, try to put together some videos showing what I did, hoping people will understand the challenges of creating the videos without them having been planned. But sometimes those can be interesting as well. So here we go. This should be fun.